Hi, this is Ted at Valley of the Dolly. So for a long time, when it came to my financial planning and my retirement planning, I simply utilized my 401k. I maxed it out. I let the company match 50%, and I crossed my fingers and prayed that I would have enough money at the time it came for me to retire. And later, when I started to get closer to 50, I started to really question, did I know if I had enough? Did I know if my financial roadmap was really strong? And now I'm not a financial planner and I'm not a financial advisor. So I'm making this video because I want you to understand what my own personal journey is. And you can maybe use that to really take a serious look at what your own finances are and maybe talk to a retirement financial advisor to make sure that you are on track for your own retirement. At some point, I came to this conclusion that I would really want to know exactly how much money I would be able to spend every year once it came time for me to retire. And this is true not just for expats, people like us who are living overseas, but this is also true for people who are living in the United States. So I wanted to know, how much money would I have to spend every year in my retirement? And wouldn't you like to know if you'd be able to leave your job of your own accord, or if you would need to cling on to that job until the very last minute when you're forced out into retirement? And wouldn't you rather know those things than feel terrified that maybe you don't have enough and you don't have a roadmap or a plan in place for how you're going to save for your retirement and then spend the money in your retirement? And especially if you hit an unexpected bump in the road, maybe a medical emergency or some other expenses, right? So if you gathered 100 Americans between the ages of 55 and 60 into a room, my best estimate is only about 30 to 40 people in that room would actually have sat down and projected the following things. What are their Social Security benefits going to be when they retire? What portfolio withdrawals would they be looking at taking if they have a portfolio of retirement accounts already? What is their pension income if they have any, or their spouse's pension income, or their spouse's retirement accounts? What taxes and the tax implications need to be addressed during their 50s and 60s and prior to retirement? Also, what are the healthcare costs that they have right now, in what might they be looking at in the future, at least in the short term? And then with all this information, kind of putting together a sustainable annual spending amount in their retirement. I know the majority of people are still thinking, how much do I have saved? They're not really thinking about what monthly income will everything that I've worked for produce for me month after month in retirement. And this distinction is really important because somebody who has $1.5 million saved, but no income plan and no retirement plan in place, may be less prepared than someone who only has $800,000 saved, but has a retirement plan in place. So for a long time, I didn't want to dive in and make a lifetime financial plan for a number of different reasons. One, like I've mentioned before, I put money into my 401k and I crossed my fingers and just hoped that was enough. I didn't want to think anything more about it. Two, I didn't really know if I had enough money to make my long-term financial goals a reality. And the idea that possibly I didn't was too depressing for me to really want to study this and look at this. And third, I really thought maybe this is too complicated for me to truly sit down and get an accurate plan and game out different scenarios for my financial future. But wouldn't you really like to know exactly how you've progressed towards your retirement and your financial goals, and if they're possible? Wouldn't you like to know exactly when you could retire and not have to retire? And not have that feeling that you're scared of being forced out of your job? Wouldn't you like to know what your monthly income will be when you retire, and what you will want to do with that money when you're ready to retire? And what if you were hit by a sudden event? Maybe you were laid off. Maybe you had a medical emergency. I know I had a medical emergency in my 50s, and I began to really wonder, oh my God, I was not anticipating going into chemotherapy, having cancer, having a stem cell transplant, having surgery. All these things came out of nowhere. And that's why, for me, I found that having a financial plan in place proved really helpful in alleviating a lot of the anxiety and tension that comes with dealing with a major life event that happens during your work years. before you're ever ready to retire. But you know what I also learned is that it's really not that complicated to enter your information into a tool like Bolden or Projection Lab. And what you get out of that is much more peace of mind and the confidence to know what you need to do to make your retirement and your future financial plans a reality. When I bring this topic up with a lot of my friends, they kind of get this kind of glazed over look in their eye and they just don't want to talk about it. And they either don't want to talk about it because they don't want to dive into this either, and that's exactly how I felt, or they say they have a financial planner, and when they get close to retirement, the financial planner will tell them how they will be able to spend their money in retirement. And my feeling is you need to look at this before you get to that cliff of retirement. You need to step back years before that and start looking at your financial future. Because my response to this is that really the only way for you to course correct is to know in your 40s and 50s. And it's never too late to start. So if you've already passed that date, it's still better to know than not to know, right? But it's best to know in your 40s and 50s, are you working towards the goal that you anticipated and that you wanted? And what would it take for me to course correct to make those goals a reality? And this is really interesting because they say only 35% of Americans feel that they are on track to retire. Only 35%. And almost half of Americans aged 62 to 74 cannot count on more than $25,000 per year per person to live off in their retirement golden years. And that is really a startling figure. That's really, is it even basically enough to cover your basic expenses? If you look at the poverty rate for elderly people in the United States versus other countries, in the United States it's 23%. In Canada it's 12%. In France it's only 4 to 5%. In the Netherlands it's 3%. In the Netherlands it's 3%. And in the US it's 23% poverty for people in their golden years. But what we all really want to know is, do we have enough money to maintain our standard of living in retirement? And as I mentioned before, half of Americans aged 62 to 74 have less than $25,000 per year per person to spend. And that's roughly the US poverty threshold, and it's far below the international benchmark of 50% of the national median income. So in the United States, the national median income is $84,000 or almost $84,000. So half of that would be $42,000 a year, which is considerably more than the $25,000. National Retirement Risk Index shows that 39% of people will not be able to maintain their standard of living in retirement. And this is based on the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances. And so you want to know, how are you going to avoid this when it comes to your turn to retire, right? So looking at this paper by the Economic Policy Research Organization, if you're just starting out your career, for example, now, Aon recommends that you start saving 16% per year. And that may seem like a lot of money, but if you have a matching 401k from your employer, you may already be saving 6% personally and another 3 or 4% by your employer. That gives you 10% of that 60% already saved. And that 6% is not that great of a leap for you to start putting away as well. And that means that by the time you reach your early 60s, you will have met your retirement goals simply by putting that amount of money away starting in your very early career. And if you're heading into your mid-50s, Aon has said that it is recommended that people have saved by the age of 55 7 times their yearly salary. So if you make $100,000 a year, they would recommend that you have saved $700,000. And this is because by your working age retirement of 67, you would then have saved $1 million, which would be very close to the $1.1 million Aon recommends as your goal for somebody who has a $100,000 a year salary. So this is part of Aon's Real Deal framework, and it offers a simple way of estimating the ability to maintain your financial class when you retire. But these estimates are important because it's your ability to sustain your standard of living, not just at 67, but all the way to the age of roughly 90. And that's where they estimate that a household would need 11.1 times their income at 67, their retirement age, for them to be able to spend that out through the rest of their golden years. So one of the easiest things that you can do for yourself is try one of these tools. Now, I'm not being paid to endorse one of these products, and again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just telling you what worked for me, which was to utilize one of these tools and to understand what my financial future looked like. Because if you go to a financial advisor, you will already have a really strong understanding of what your financial future and your roadmap looks like, and what you would need to course correct along the way. And then you can meet with a financial advisor, and they can tell you if they believe that you're also on course for this. And I would really love it if people put in the comments if they've also met with a financial advisor, and did you use a tool like this, and did it line up with the roadmap that the financial advisor laid out for you as well. Now, we all know that even looking at these tools, life is not linear, so it's not a straight line that goes up and then goes down, or up and down. It is a year where maybe you have a big vacation planned when you're 68 and you've just retired, and now you're going to take this big vacation. So your spending goes above that line, and then the following year it goes below that line because you don't have any large vacation spending. But then a couple of years later, maybe you have a big expenditure on the house. Maybe you need to re-roof the house, or maybe your child is getting married and you need to put in money for that as well. So you'll see that life is not necessarily linear, and you have expenses that go up and down. But those are really important things to remember, that life isn't linear, but overall you see that line grow with you. And I know that this is definitely true, because even in my working years, I was not anticipating getting hit with cancer and having to go through chemotherapy and stem cell transplants and surgery. These were all financial hits that I was not anticipating making during my working years. But it was really important to have a financial roadmap that I could look at and then make adjustments to, based on what was happening with me now and how I wanted my future to look like. So Bolden, for example, what used to be called New Retirement, but its strength is really that this is a retirement decision engine. And it really allows you to model, for example, your Social Security claiming times, taxes and the effect of that, Medicare, RMDs, Roth conversions, pension income, rental property income, spending changes, inflation, and incorporate all of this and give you different retirement dates that you can plug in there. So it offers you a lot of flexibility with that. And options like Bolden, they're really meant to give you a comprehensive projection, right? It'll model your entire financial life, including your income, which is your career, your pensions, your annuities, your debts, which is your mortgages, your loans, and your recurring one-time expenses that you know are coming down the road as well. And then utilize inflation so you can see the impact of inflation on it as well. And this is kind of one of my favorite tools, but there are a lot of them out there. So again, I would love to hear which kind of tools you're using as well. And it can show you on a chart what your anticipated savings will be over the rest of your life. And it shows you markers on that timeline in your financial journey. So you may have a marker at the point that you start taking Social Security. You may have a marker for when Medicare kicks in. You may have a marker for when your spouse or your significant other starts taking their Social Security, when they start taking a pension or diving into their retirement accounts. And all of this allows you to plan these things long term and understand exactly what's working for you. And it'll also kind of tell you when you need to make your required minimum distributions, your RMDs. So all these things are really important when it comes down for you to plan. And there's also an assets and debits chart. And this gives you your expected balance for your retirement accounts. And you can see what might be used, which accounts might be used first, and which ones will continue to grow. And you can see your finances grow during your retirement, or you can see how you might end up spending that down and what your chances of success would be, depending on how much you anticipate spending every month. There's also a home and real estate tab, and this allows you to include an expected sale of your house if you have something like that, if you want to move or downsize. And there's also an expenses and healthcare tab, and this will tell you not just what your general reoccurring expenses are, but it will also incorporate a percentage for what your healthcare expenses are and what your housing expenses are. And then with this, it has a what if scenario. So it allows you to simulate multiple life events, downsizing your home, earlier retirement, market downturns. It has a Social Security Explorer optimizing exactly when to take your benefits, advanced tax modeling, and then it also looks at your chances of success, right? So it uses an institutional grade Monte Carlo simulator, and this will give you an idea of what almost kind of a randomized option of what your retirement would be. So you may have a high and a low, and then the Monte Carlo will be somewhere in the middle, right? And this will give you a probability of your retirement success in the future. And the money flows, this will help you customize and automate the order in which your accounts, your taxable, tax-deferred, Roth, HSAs, any of those kind of accounts are drawn down to fund your expenses in retirement. So all these things are really helpful to look at and be able to understand which account you might utilize first, which account you might utilize second. And Bolden AI is an AI tool that you can ask questions of to get a better understanding with this. And I'm going to put up a chart here, and this kind of shows 3 different plans. So one is Bolden, one is Projection Lab, one is Empower, and this looks at kind of what is the strength when it comes to retirement, income planning, tax planning, Roth conversion analysis. And you can look at Bolden. Bolden has a free plan, and then it has a $12 a month plan. And what the advantages to each one of these are, because as we mentioned before, Bolden is really a retirement decision engine, and it's really going to model your Social Security claims, your taxes, Medicare, RMDs, Roth conversion, rental planning, all that kind of stuff. And it answers questions like, if I convert $40,000 to a Roth every year until age 70, how much do I save over my lifetime by doing these Roth conversions over not doing them? Projection Lab, this is maybe best for someone who really enjoys spreadsheets and really is thinking of something as Excel for retirement planning, if they're really into the more complicated spreadsheets. Empower really seems to be best for somebody who really wants to understand where their money is now, how investments are performing, their net worth, spending. It's also important to note that, with Projection Lab, they don't allow you to tie your accounts, and a lot of people like that because they feel that for safety, those accounts are not tied to Bolden, so they're not worried about passwords getting passed through the system. Now with Bolden, it does allow you to tie your accounts to Bolden, but you don't have to. You can manually enter your balances for your different investment accounts. You can manually enter your spending, etc. And it doesn't take very long, but if you do it every 3 months, 6 months, a year, whenever you're comfortable with this, it does give you an updated view of what your finances are. So I'm wondering if anybody is using these kind of tools, and if you've used them and then gone to your financial planner, and if the goals that your financial planner had laid out for you, if they align with what a tool like Bolden has also provided you. This is Ted at Valley of the Dolly. I look forward to talking with you again soon. If you like this information, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thanks again. Bye now.